This debate continues. In fact, it's escalating about girls and women in sport, protecting them from having to compete against biological males. And the impact on the federal election has been extraordinary. Imagine what a nutty debate it is when you have to push to get a statement of the obvious like this from the alternative Prime Minister.
Girls should be able to play sport against girls and boys should be able to play sport against boys.
Yeah, sure, but should girls and women be protected from having to compete against biological males or share change rooms with them? Well, all this was kicked along by ridiculous draft guidelines from the Northern Territory Education Department yesterday, a story revealed by our own Matt Cunningham. And these guidelines were telling teachers not to even use the terms girls and boys and to avoid gender-based sports. The Northern Territory government is backing away from all that now. But the debate triggered by the Liberal candidate for Warringah goes on. She's been attacked by the Green Left independent member for Warringah, Zali Steggall, who says raising this stuff is transphobic. And despite Deves' apologies about past language, the pile-on from the left and the media, misrepresenting much of what she said, goes on. The good news, though, is that the Prime Minister won't be bowing to the baying mob.
What I won't allow is for those who are seeking to cancel Katherine, simply because she has a different view to them on the issue of women and girls in sport. I'm not going to indulge that because, you know, in this country, I think Australians are getting pretty fed up with having to walk on eggshells every day because they may or may not say something one day that's going to upset someone. Now, you shouldn't seek to upset anyone else. You shouldn't seek to upset people. You should deal with things in a very sensitive way.
OK, so that's the Prime Minister and good on him. But what about the painfully woke Liberal Treasurer of New South Wales, Matt Kean? He stands by his calls for Deves to be disendorsed as a candidate. Earlier, I asked him why he would try to cancel a woman trying to stand up for girls and women and protecting them from having to play against or share change rooms with biological males.
Well, good evening, Chris, and good evening to your viewers. I certainly don't want to cancel Katherine Deves or silence her whatsoever. All I've said is that the language that she's used in this debate is inappropriate, invoking the Holocaust, one of the worst atrocities in human history for this issue, is offensive to those families that lost loved ones.
Well, she's not specifically invoked the Holocaust. She's not specifically invoked the Holocaust. She's made references to Nazism in terms of totalitarian arguments trying to silence people, and she's apologised for that. Yet you're trying to disendorse her. That is a form of cancellation.
You wouldn't agree. No, not at all, Chris. You wouldn't agree with those comments. You don't use them on your show and your viewers don't use them in their homes. It's not appropriate, particularly for someone who wants to put themselves forward as a community leader. Now, I've made my views very well known with regard to that language and those comments. It's nothing to do with the issue about gender in sport. What I'm focusing on is the language that is overblown and out of proportion, and in many cases offensive.
Hang on a second.
Is that there are ways that we can conduct this debate. Well, Chris, could I just finish what I'm saying? I'm just saying there are ways we can conduct this debate. There are some legitimate issues that have been raised in the discourse of this, and I think there is a good way to go about that, an appropriate way to go about that. What we're talking about is a group of people in the community, a very, very small group of people in the community who are already quite marginalised. They have some of the highest rates of suicide, and all I'm saying is that the language that we use in these debates actually has an impact on people, particularly vulnerable people, and we should be cautious about that.
Now, Katherine Deves has gone out of her way to say she's not anti-trans. She's about protecting girls and women. She's not anti-trans at all. Now, you talk about these references to Nazism. She's apologised for the language she's used. So many people, when they're talking about totalitarianism in debates where people are trying to be silenced, invoke Nazism, and it's always an easy cop. It's always a step too far. She's apologised for that. Yet you're now trying to cancel her. You want her off the list as a Liberal Party candidate. That is cancellation. That, in many respects, is just underlying her point that to speak out on behalf of women and girls on these issues leads to an emotional and a very aggressive backlash because people don't want you to speak your mind on this.
Chris, let me be very clear to your viewers. I don't want to cancel anyone. In fact, all I'm saying is that there is a way to conduct these debates, and it's a respectful one, not one fueled with inflammatory language that hurts people. You don't conduct your program using appalling language and appalling examples.
Look, it's appalling language. How does it?
We're just saying there's a way to carry these debates. Like
how does it hurt
robust
people?
Debates can be had without these people. Well, I mean,
she's not hurt people. What you're doing is you're joining a media leftist pylon that has taken little snippets of what she said, has exaggerated them, has been deceptive about them, and tried to make out that she's used very inflammatory language. Well, it is, as you say. She's made
I've got
no
enormous
comparisons.
respect for you, Chris, but I'm not going to let you reframe this discussion. All I've said is that the comments she's made with regard to these issues are inappropriate for someone who wants to put themselves forward as a community leader to represent all people and our community in all its diversity. That's all I've said. And
no, you've gone a step further, because everybody has said that. In fact, Katherine Deves, let me interrupt, Treasurer. Katherine Deves herself has said that some of her language was inappropriate before she went into politics. She's apologised. Others, like your Premier Dominic Perrottet and the Prime Minister Scott Morrison, have accepted too that she used some very, very ill-chosen language, and she's apologised for it and moving on. Everybody's in agreement about that, but you're saying because of that she should be disendorsed as a candidate. So you are joining the Green left pylon against a Liberal candidate.
Very clear. Let me be very clear, Chris. This was an apology that came because it was called out by the media. This is not a one-off drunken Twitter rant. This is not an ill-placed comment 30 years ago at university. These are consistent references that have been made over a long period of time and recently. And Chris, quite frankly, I don't think that has a place in Australian public discourse. We can have these debates and we should have them robustly, but there is a line, and I think hate speech or hurtful speech is inappropriate in our public discourse. We can be better than that. You and I are having a very robust discussion here, Chris, and that's what we want in our democracy. But there are ways to carry it out, and I'm saying I don't think the way that individual carried out this debate was appropriate or helpful in the public discourse.
It's a gross exaggeration to call it hate speech. Let me read you what Rachel Wong says. She's the CEO of Women's Forum about the way women are cancelled in debates like this. She says the vicious demonisation of Warringah Liberal candidate Katherine Deves is the latest attempt to silence women who speak out about the impact of harmful gender policies and practices on women's sex-based rights and the welfare of children. This is exactly what's going on here, isn't it?
No, it's definitely not, Chris. I mean, what you're doing is conflating the issues. I'm saying that the language used by the candidate for Warringah is inappropriate. And I've called that language out. I don't think it has a place in our public discourse. The issues that the candidate is talking about with regard to gender in sports, that's appropriate to have a discussion about, and one that I welcome. We want to make sure that women in sport are able to play safely and fairly, and we need to make sure that there are rules in place to allow that to happen. But that doesn't require invective that is colourful, overblown and completely inappropriate. That's all I'm arguing, Chris.
But all Deves is arguing is that when you talk about these issues publicly, when you argue and advocate for the rights of women and girls in sport the way she has, that you get crushed by a lot of people trying to demonise you. And you're doing exactly that by trying to have her disendorsed.
No, I won't let you frame it in that fashion. That's not what I'm doing at all. I want more people arguing for women in our society, whether it be in sport or otherwise.
Well, it's very easy to solve this then.
Gender target for New South Wales government boards, Chris.
It's very easy to stop me framing it like this if you just say that she used inappropriate language, she's apologised it, and then you support her being the Liberal candidate for Warringah. Withdraw your call for her to be disendorsed.
Well, Chris, let me be very clear to you. I've made my position clear. The Prime Minister has made his position clear. And now it's up to the people of Warringah to make their decision on whether they think these comments are appropriate.
Well, what about another candidate, a male candidate who's been caught out with a whole lot of social media posts that are very sexist? They include naked women and the like. And he says, for instance, that size doesn't matter when you have 130 kilograms pushing it. Do you think that sort of comment is appropriate for someone to be endorsed as a candidate in the federal election?
No, I think it's disgusting. I think it has no place in our public discourse, and I think it should be called out equally. I hope the Labor Party will take action against that candidate.
Yeah, that's a comment. That's a comment. Hang on a second, though. That's a comment made by a male who's of the Labor Party, and you've not been out condemning him and demanding that he be disendorsed. You're more interested in trying to silence and cancel a Liberal Party woman who's fighting for the rights of girls and women.
No, that's absolute rubbish, Chris, and I'm not going to let you get away with framing it that way. This is the first time I've heard about that comment that you've referenced to that gentleman. I look forward to seeing it. I look forward to, I hope the Labor Party will take strong action, but I'm a senior figure in the Liberal Party. I stand by the Liberal Party values. You know, the opening line of our values statement is that we believe in the inalienable rights of all people, not some people, all people. We are the party of freedom, not the party of intolerance. We are the party of the individual, not the party of bile and bigotry.
But you're being intolerant.
Those principles. So
you're being intolerant. You're trying to steamroll someone out after they've apologised for a comment.
Completely inappropriate in the public discourse, Chris. That's all I'm saying. I have no problem whatsoever with anyone entering into the public debate in a robust way, and that's what we want. We want more people entering into the public discourse. We want people standing up for women or what other issues they're passionate about, but there is one way to do that and there's another. You choose the right way to do that. You don't use this overblown language. You don't invoke these horrific periods in our history to trivialise them, to push your own agenda, and nor do the people that are watching this program. We should call out that language, and we should always have and welcome robust, strong debate about these important topics, Chris, and that's what I'll always continue to do.
How do you feel about so far having caused more trouble for the Liberal Party in this federal election campaign than Anthony Albanese has?
Well, I don't think anyone could match Albo's incompetence when it comes to his performance. And I think we've all seen in the last week exactly why Scott Morrison needs to be returned. So I'll be doing everything I can to make sure that happens. But, you know,
except in Warringah,
go on holidays because there's an election campaign. We're going to, like, this kind of behaviour shouldn't have a role to play in our public discourse, nor in one of the major political parties. I've made my views known. The Prime Minister's made his views known. And now it's up to the people of Warringah to determine what they think about this position.
Matt Kean, thanks for joining us.
Thanks as always, Chris.
Well, the good news out of that, when you listen to Matt Kean, he accepts now that she is the Liberal candidate. She'll stay there and it's up to voters. Might be interesting to have a look at those voting numbers in Warringah on May the 21st, because Katherine Deves certainly has name recognition now like she could never have dreamed of as a first-time candidate. And I think 80% of people or more, as we've shown you with polling, will agree with her stance.